In today's episode of the Full Potential Parenting Podcast, you're going to learn about a sensory system that holds the key to understanding why you get triggered and why your children get triggered. So stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Full Potential Parenting Podcast. I'm Allison Morris, and today I want to talk with you about neuroception. I've mentioned neuroception briefly in some previous episodes, if you want to go back and listen to some of those. But today I really want to focus in on it a little bit more in depth. Neuroception is a word that was coined by Dr. Stephen Porges as part of his work in coming up with the polyvagal theory. And if you're not familiar with that, go back and listen to some previous episodes, because we're not going to go into that too much today. I'm actually going to read you Dr. Porges's definition of neuroception. Neuroception is the process through which the nervous system evaluates risk without requiring awareness. This automatic process involves brain areas that evaluate cues of safety, danger, and life threat. Once these are detected via neuroception, physiological state automatically shifts to optimize survival. Although we are usually not aware of cues that trigger neuroception, we tend to be aware of the physiological shift. That's something called interoception, and I'll have another episode on that concept. So, neuroception then is an unconscious threat detection system that is pretty much working all the time. This means that our body brains are constantly, and those of our children, are constantly on the lookout for threat, for danger, for anything that can let us know whether we're safe or not. But what's so interesting about this, and how this can kind of go wrong sometimes, is it has varying degrees of sensitivity in different people. And while some of the things that provide cues, you might say, make sense, right? A loud, unexpected noise can set off our neuroceptive alarm system. Most of us would say, sure, that makes sense. I find that, that gives us our startle response. But here are some other things that you may not have considered that can also set off the danger signals, especially for our kids, but this can happen to us as well, right? We have the same physiological structures as our kids, even if their brains aren't as fully developed as ours are, at least in their higher order thinking. But these survival responses are very well developed already. One has to do with tone of voice. One of the things that can go off with people, children or adults, with autism, and this has to do with cranial nerves and how they work with muscles in the face and in the mouth in particular. When we have a voice that is flat, that has no modulation or no inflection, it sounds more automatic. It does not sound what we might call very human. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but right, we tend to think it sounds more mechanical, more automatic. It's much more difficult for us to relate to that kind of a voice as opposed to a voice that has much more modulation. So this is why Every mother in the world instinctively uses a voice that goes up and down, and it's very exaggerated because infants are very calmed by voices that have this kind of intonation or modulation, right? So when we get angry, often our voices tend to flatten out. I mean, they also get louder, right? We already talked about that. So the volume can be alarming, but also when we start to lose the modulation in our voice, or if your child has a teacher who doesn't have a particularly a lot of modulation in their vocal style, that may be why your child can't learn from that teacher. Conversely, if they have a teacher who's got a soft, sing-songy kind of voice, that might be a teacher that your child feels safer with, even if they have no idea why. Another aspect of voice that can be that's just something to keep in mind is pitch. So for reasons that might seem logical, voices that are low, deep, grumbly, growly, can be very threatening, right? Because it mimics in many ways the sounds of wild animals growling. So that may be yet one reason, in addition maybe to size differentials as well, that your child might be more intimidated by men, maybe by a spouse or partner, or just male friends or male teachers or male doctors. So Stephen Porges always talks about Johnny Mathis being a really sort of perfect cue of safety for most people. So do you remember Johnny Mathis, a singer from back in the 50s, who had sort of a really light tenor voice, so it was a little higher, and just exactly the right kind of voice to help everybody calm and feel, turn on that social engagement system. So also really good for, intimate relationships and all those sorts of things. So you might just want to, you might even want to mention that. Obviously, if your spouse or partner has a low voice naturally, they can't change their voice to help your child feel safer. But they might then be somewhat more conscious when speaking to your child about whether they're rumbling and grumbling, or turning on maybe more of the growly sound. Maybe they can use more modulation in their voice so that it's not just at a constant deep pitch. Again, there's only so much you can do about that, but just knowing that can be really helpful. So here's one more thing that might be really surprising to learn. To children who are already kind of hyper vigilant, that is, they're already really primed to find danger, even when it may not be present. A blank face is very easily, I was going to say perceived, but picked up by the neuroceptive sensors as being a dangerous face, or an angry face, maybe not dangerous. So if you are feeling relaxed, perhaps, and maybe you're just staring off into space, you've got something on your mind, you're not really engaged with anyone, your child might actually feel that you are angry or upset, even when you're feeling pretty neutral and maybe even at peace. So the neuroceptive sensors are paying very close attention to our facial features, right? I mean, evolutionarily, this was key in interpreting when danger might be present. And it may not seem fair, right? That blank face is interpreted as an angry or upset face. But again, awareness is worth a lot here, because if then your child starts to act out or is getting cranky, or you feel them starting to fall apart, then you might say, oh, wow, I wonder if I was looking scary to my child, inadvertently, unconsciously yourself, right? But then you can maybe then engage in some soothing actions, or talk to your child and just check in with a big smile on your face, right? And counteract some of the neuroceptive cues that your child had been picking up on. Another, and this one I'll end on this. I don't want to go on too long here today. Related to noises, though, so background noise also can sometimes be quite threatening sounding. So, and again, this may not be something you always have an ability to change, but maybe you can mask it with some other sounds. So low humming of appliances, maybe a refrigerator, anything else in your home, or again, in, like, God, hospitals are awful for that, right? Beeping noises. But low humming noises can be particularly threatening, especially to people who are already, they're used to being triggered. And so it's as though their neuroception faculties are, turned to 11. So they're looking for danger all the time. And they're much more likely to find it, even when it may not, again, be objectively a dangerous situation. Because it really has nothing to do with whether you believe it might be, whether a sort of a rational, logical, objective person might consider a situation dangerous or not. It is entirely a subjective thing. And it is all about how any individual person's neuroception is or isn't interpreting something as a threat. So keep neuroception in mind when your kid is falling apart, when you are interacting with them at all times. If you can be more aware of the tone, the pitch, the modulation in your voice, and what your facial features are doing, play around with some of that, and then you might be surprised at how many things you can prevent, or that you can pull your child out of some difficult situations, just by paying attention to how you're being in your own, with your own voice and with your own facial expressions. So lots more to go into here, but I hope that gives you a nice introduction to the concept of neuroception. As always, hop on over to parentingmasterclass.com if you'd like to pick up a free masterclass. And I hope you'll join me for another episode soon. Thanks, everybody, and bye-bye.